The year is 1307. King Philip the Fair of France has just ordered the arrest of every Knight Templar in his kingdom. By dawn, thousands of the most powerful warriors in medieval Europe are in chains, accused of heresy, devil worship, and crimes so shocking that even hardened soldiers refuse to speak them aloud. But here's what will blow your mind. This wasn't the end of the Templars. It was just the beginning of something far more sinister. And today, nearly 700 years later, their successors might be sitting in boardrooms, government offices, and secret meeting halls pulling strings you never even knew existed. Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the mysteries that shape our world. I'm your host, and today we're exploring one of history's most persistent questions. Did the Knights Templar really disappear, or did they simply evolve into something more powerful? And what's the real connection between these medieval warrior monks and the modern Freemasons, who some claim secretly run the world? Before we begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, after what you're about to learn, you'll want to catch every single video we release. And if you think this sounds like conspiracy theory nonsense, stick around, because the documented evidence we're about to present might just change your mind. Let's start with a simple question that nobody seems to ask. How does a religious military order that was officially disbanded and brutally suppressed in the 14th century somehow leave traces that connect directly to secret societies that exist today? The answer lies in one of the most successful cover-ups in human history. The Knights Templar weren't just any medieval organization. Founded in 1119 during the First Crusade, they became the most powerful financial institution in Europe within just 2 centuries. Think about that for a moment. These weren't just knights with swords and horses. They created the first international banking system. They issued letters of credit that worked across continents. They built a network of fortified temples and safe houses that stretched from London to Jerusalem. They accumulated wealth that made kings envious and established political connections that reached into every royal court in Europe. But here's where it gets interesting. When King Philip ordered their destruction, he didn't just want their money, though their treasury would have solved France's financial crisis overnight. He wanted their secrets, their knowledge, their network, and according to historical records, he never found what he was really looking for. The night before the mass arrests, Templar ships disappeared from the port of La Rochelle. Wagons full of mysterious cargo left Templar strongholds under cover of darkness. Entire libraries of documents vanished without a trace. Where did it all go? The official story says nowhere, that the Templars were completely destroyed, their secrets buried with their executed leaders. But the evidence suggests something entirely different happened. Something that would explain why certain symbols, certain rituals, and certain organizational structures suddenly appeared in other secret societies within decades of the Templars' supposed demise. Enter the Freemasons. Now, before you roll your eyes and click away, hear me out. The mainstream historical narrative about Freemasonry's origins is that it evolved naturally from medieval stonemason guilds sometime in the 17th century. Craftsmen who built cathedrals started accepting non-craftsmen as members, eventually becoming a fraternal organization focused on moral philosophy and charitable work. Nice, clean, simple explanation. But this narrative has some serious problems. First, there's virtually no documentation showing this gradual evolution from craft guild to philosophical society. The earliest Masonic lodges appear suddenly in Scotland and England in the early 1600s with fully developed ritual systems, complex symbolism, and organizational structures that seem to have no connection whatsoever to actual stonemasonry. It's like finding a fully grown oak tree with no acorn, no sapling, no growth rings to show how it developed. Second, and this is crucial, many of the symbols and rituals that define Freemasonry are identical to documented Templar practices. The skull and crossbones, Templar. The compass and square arranged in specific geometric patterns, found carved in Templar ruins. The emphasis on Solomon's Temple as the spiritual center of the organization. The Templars literally built their headquarters on the supposed site of Solomon's Temple and called themselves the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. But the most compelling evidence isn't symbolic, it's geographical and genealogical. After 1307, while Templars were being burned at the stake in France, something fascinating happened in Scotland. Scotland's king, Robert the Bruce, had been excommunicated by the Pope for political reasons, which meant papal orders to arrest Templars weren't binding in his territory. Suddenly, Scotland became a haven for displaced Templars, and within decades, Scotland became the birthplace of organized Freemasonry. Even more intriguing, many of the founding families of Scottish Masonic lodges can trace their lineages directly back to known Templar Knights. The Sinclair family, who became hereditary Grand Masters of Scottish Masonry, were prominent Templar supporters before 1307. The Rosslyn Chapel, built by the Sinclairs in the 15th century, contains stone carvings that perfectly match Templar symbolism found nowhere else in Scottish architecture. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so maybe there's a historical connection, but that was hundreds of years ago. What does any of this have to do with modern power structures? Well, that's where things get really interesting and really disturbing. Freemasonry didn't stay in Scotland. As the British Empire expanded, Masonic lodges spread to every corner of the globe. And here's the key point that mainstream historians often gloss over. These weren't just social clubs. From the very beginning, Masonic lodges attracted political leaders, military officers, judges, bankers, and industrialists. They created exclusive networks of powerful men who shared secret knowledge, performed secret rituals, and swore sacred oaths to help each other advance their interests. The American Revolution provides a perfect case study. Of the 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence, at least 9 were confirmed Freemasons, with strong evidence suggesting the number was much higher. George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Paul Revere, all Masons. The Boston Tea Party was planned in a Masonic lodge. The Constitutional Convention was heavily influenced by Masonic political philosophy. Even the layout of Washington, D.C., with its geometric patterns and symbolic monuments, reflects Masonic architectural principles. But here's what's truly unsettling. This pattern didn't end with the American Revolution. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, Masonic networks continued to play central roles in major political and economic developments. The unification of Italy was largely orchestrated by Giuseppe Garibaldi and other prominent Masons. The French Revolution was heavily influenced by Masonic political philosophy and included many Masonic leaders. Cecil Rhodes, who created the Rhodes Scholarship and essentially controlled Southern Africa's diamond and gold industries, was a high-degree Mason who explicitly stated his goal was to establish a secret society that would bring the entire world under Anglo-Saxon rule. And it's not just historical figures. In modern times, Masonic membership has included presidents, prime ministers, Supreme Court justices, Federal Reserve chairmen, media moguls, and corporate executives. Harry Truman was a Mason, Franklin Roosevelt was a Mason. Both George Bushes have been linked to secret societies with Masonic connections. The current global financial system still operates through networks and institutions that can trace their organizational DNA back to Masonic lodges. But wait, you might say, correlation doesn't prove causation. Just because powerful people have been Masons doesn't mean Masons control world events. And you'd be absolutely right if that's all the evidence we had. But there's more, much more. The real smoking gun isn't membership lists or symbolic connections. It's the documented existence of higher degree Masonic orders that operate in complete secrecy, even from regular Masons. Most people who know anything about Freemasonry think it ends with the 3rd degree, Master Mason, but that's just the beginning. There are additional degrees, additional orders, additional levels of initiation that create inner circles within inner circles. The Scottish Rite has 33 degrees, the York Rite has multiple additional orders. But beyond these publicly acknowledged systems are even more secretive organizations like the Order of the Eastern Star, the Knights of Malta, and groups that don't even have public names. These higher orders don't just perform symbolic rituals, they coordinate real-world activities, They share intelligence, they coordinate business deals, they influence political decisions. And here's where the Templar connection becomes absolutely crucial, because these highest-level Masonic orders don't just claim inspiration from the Knights Templar, they claim direct organizational descent. They possess documents, artifacts, and ritual knowledge that they say was passed down through an unbroken chain from the original Templars. Whether or not you believe these claims, the important point is that the people who run these organizations believe them. They see themselves as inheritors of a 900-year-old mission. What was that original mission? According to Templar historians, it wasn't just protecting Christian pilgrims or accumulating wealth. The Templars believed they were guardians of secret knowledge, ancient wisdom about the true nature of reality, about hidden forces that shape human events, about techniques for acquiring and maintaining power that go far beyond conventional politics or economics. This brings us to the most disturbing possibility of all. What if the Knights Templar never actually disappeared? What if they simply went underground, evolved, adapted, and continued their original mission through new organizational forms? What if Freemasonry was never really a separate organization at all, but rather a public face for something much older and much more secretive? Consider the evidence. The timing of Masonic emergence coincides perfectly with Templar suppression. The geographical centers of early Masonry match exactly with areas where Templars found refuge. The symbols, rituals, and organizational structures are virtually identical. The membership patterns show consistent attraction of political and economic elites. The higher degree orders explicitly claim Templar heritage, and the global influence of Masonic networks matches what you'd expect from an organization with 900 years of accumulated knowledge, wealth, and connections. But let's be clear about what this really means. We're not talking about some cartoonish conspiracy where robed figures sit around a table deciding who wins elections and which countries go to war. Real power is much more subtle than that. It operates through networks of mutual obligation, shared interests, and coordinated action. It works by ensuring that the right people are in the right positions at the right times, that information flows along certain channels, that opportunities are created for some and closed to others. Think about how modern finance actually works. A relatively small number of investment banks, hedge funds, and central banks make decisions that affect the economic lives of billions of people. The people who run these institutions didn't get there by accident. They were recommended by the right people, educated at the right schools, initiated into the right networks. They share common worldviews, common interests, and common methods for maintaining their power. Or consider how political power really operates. Elections might determine who holds office, but the real decisions are made in private meetings between officials and advisors, lobbyists and donors, experts and insiders. The people who get invited to these meetings, who have access to real decision-makers, who can influence policy behind the scenes, aren't chosen randomly. They're part of networks that have been developing for centuries. The genius of organizations like the Freemasons is that they operate in plain sight. They have public meetings, published directories, charitable activities, and social events. But within this public structure are private levels that most members never see. And within those private levels are connections to other organizations, other networks, other power centers that create a web of influence that spans the globe. Now, I want to be absolutely clear about something. I'm not saying that every Mason is part of some world-controlling conspiracy. The vast majority of Freemasons are regular people who join for social reasons, charitable activities, or personal development. They have no idea about higher-level activities, and they'd probably be shocked to learn about some of the connections we've discussed today. But at the highest levels, something different is happening. When you look at the membership roles of organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the World Economic Forum, and similar groups, you find overlapping networks of people who also happen to be high-degree Masons or members of related secret societies. These aren't coincidences, they're the visible traces of invisible power structures. And here's what should really concern you. These power structures aren't accountable to anyone. They're not elected, they're not regulated, they operate through private meetings, private communications, and private agreements. The people involved might hold public offices or run public companies, but their real loyalty is to networks that the public never sees and can never influence. So what's the end game? What are these modern inheritors of the Templars actually trying to accomplish? Based on their own published documents and stated goals, they're working toward a new world order, a global system of governance that transcends national boundaries and democratic processes. They want to manage global resources, control global populations, and shape global culture according to their vision of what humanity should become. Some of this sounds beneficial. Who wouldn't want to end war, eliminate poverty, and solve environmental problems? But the methods they're proposing involve unprecedented concentrations of power in unelected institutions. They're talking about global currencies, global taxation, global regulation, and global enforcement mechanisms that would make local democratic governance essentially meaningless. And here's the truly frightening part. They're not trying to hide this anymore. The World Economic Forum openly discusses stakeholder capitalism and the Great Reset. The United Nations promotes Agenda 2030 and global governance. Central banks coordinate policies that affect every country simultaneously. These aren't conspiracy theories, they're official policies being implemented by people who believe they have the right to reshape human civilization. The question isn't whether powerful secret societies exist and influence world events. The evidence for that is overwhelming. The question is what we're going to do about it, because right now, while most people are distracted by surface-level political theatre, the real decisions that will determine humanity's future are being made in rooms where cameras aren't allowed and transcripts aren't published. This brings us to the most important point of all. Knowledge is power, but only if it leads to action. Understanding these hidden power structures is useless unless we use that understanding to build alternative networks, alternative institutions, and alternative sources of power that can challenge the existing system. The Knights Templar were ultimately defeated not because they were evil, but because they became too powerful and too secretive for their own good. They forgot that power without legitimacy is always vulnerable. The same principle applies today. No matter how ancient their lineage or how sophisticated their methods, these modern power networks can only maintain control as long as people remain ignorant of their existence and passive in the face of their influence. But here's the hope. We live in an unprecedented age of information and connection. For the first time in human history, ordinary people have the tools to research, communicate, and organize on a global scale. The same technologies that allow secret societies to coordinate their activities also allow us to expose their methods and build resistance to their plans. The future isn't predetermined. The outcome of this ancient struggle between hidden power and human freedom isn't decided, but it will be decided by what we do with the knowledge we've gained today. So here's my challenge to you. Don't just watch this video and move on. Start digging deeper. Research the connections. Follow the money. Track the networks. Share what you learn. Build relationships with other people who understand what's happening. And most importantly, start participating in the alternative institutions and power structures that can eventually challenge the ones we've discussed today. The Knights Templar thought they could control the world through secrecy and manipulation. History proved them wrong. Their modern successors have made the same fundamental mistake. And if enough people wake up to what's happening, history will prove them wrong too. Thanks for watching. Today's deep dive into one of history's most persistent mysteries. If this video opened your eyes to connections you hadn't seen before, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to see this information. Subscribe for more investigations into the hidden forces that shape our world, and let me know in the comments what you think about these connections between the Templars and modern secret societies. Remember, the truth is out there, but it won't find you. You have to go looking for it. Until next time, keep questioning everything.